Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, my name is Pip, and I'm the festival producer at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. And I'm really excited to invite you to our programming today, an interview with me and Hope Larson, who's on the other side of me. There we go.
Hello.
Um, Hi, Hope. I'm really excited to have you here, and I'm
I'm
really
excited
excited
to
to
be here.
have a little chat. Before we begin, I wanted to take a moment and honor and acknowledge the original caretakers of the land where TCAF is situated. The Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are in territory that is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to share and care for this land. We also acknowledge that this is land covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. TCAF makes this acknowledgement as a reminder that we are all treaty people and that we all have a responsibility to the land and each other. This acknowledgement is a touchstone in our process of thinking through what it means to live and work on colonized land and is an expression of solidarity with our Indigenous siblings. TCAF commits to strengthening its relationship with Indigenous communities in Toronto and increasing Indigenous voices and perspectives in our programming in 2022 and beyond. Yes, hi, Hope. Good morning. Welcome
Hi,
to
Pip.
our
Good
panel.
afternoon.
Well, I
Is it
guess it
morning
is
for
good
you still?
afternoon. I always have trouble with this time of day. I'm always confused as to whether it's the morning or the afternoon. But either way, I am jazzed to see you. So we are here today because we're going to talk a little bit about your recent series, the Eagle Rock series, which I have all these books.
I have them also.
Yay!
Yay.
My copy of All Summer Long is autographed.
Oh, hooray.
Because I feel like I picked it up at TCAF a number of years ago.
Yes, I was there. I did a book tour for all summer long, and then TCAF was my last stop. So that was really fun. I was so tired. I remember just like running into friends, and they were like, "You look really tired." And I was so tired. It was like the tail end of 2 weeks on the road.
Oh my gosh,
But it
that's
was so
amazing.
fun. Yeah.
Is
And I think I
Toronto?
was supposed to be there a couple years ago, and then that was right when COVID hit. So I was supposed to go on another book tour for All Together Now, and that got canceled because it was like right when COVID was coming over, and I was like, I can't go. I can't go because it's like it's starting to spread, and my parents are the caregivers for my kid, and I can't give it to my parents, and then all the schools closed anyway. So I'm glad that we figured out how to do all the virtual stuff, because honestly, it's been delightful to do more virtual events. It really takes the stress out of cons to an extent.
Yeah, so you really like doing virtual events. Do you find that, like, personally, I just find it's a lot more accessible in a lot of ways. Like, I can be speaking to you and you didn't have to fly here and find accommodation and, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I miss seeing all my friends in person, but also it's like more environmentally friendly. So that's cool because you're not moving people all around the country and the world, the countries. And I kind of like just getting to look at people's faces like directly on, because when you're on a panel, usually you're all sitting in a row at a table and you don't get to like, you're kind of like leaning to see what people are saying. And it feels like more intimate in a way, which I like.
Amazing. And because I'm in Toronto right now, and where are you right now?
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina, which is where I'm from. It's my hometown. Excuse me. I'm from here, and I moved away for a lot of my 20s and then my 30s as well, like half my 30s, and then ended up moving back. So I kind of like tend to write books about wherever I'm living at the time, or like afterwards, like after I've left, and I just sort of want to get it out of my system, or sort of just like sit on all the things I've absorbed from wherever I'm living. So I did some books set in Canada, or a book set in Canada with Mercury a number of years ago. And then the Eagle Rock books are set in Los Angeles in the Eagle Rock neighborhood. So they're my little like love letter to LA books. And now I'm back home and I'm working on a book about Asheville. So yeah,
Oh, that's what you're working on. Is that what you've been working on during this pandemic? Like, is that kind of what's been occupying your time?
mostly. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Now, I think it's accurate to say, and you like, please correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the Eagle Rock series is the first series where you've done both the writing and the art since Mercury. Um, and how is making a book by yourself different than when you're collaborating with an illustrator?
I oh gosh, I think you might be right. I'm trying to think if there's one in there that I missed, but yeah, I think you're right that these are the first books I've written and drawn since Mercury. Um, it doesn't feel like really radically different to me if I'm drawing or if I'm working with another artist as far as the writing goes. Like I write the script the same way. And one of the things that I've found really helpful about working with other artists is that it forces me to be more precise in my thinking and my visual thinking, especially when I'm writing the script, because I try to leave a lot of flexibility when I'm working with somebody else who's going to be drawing it in terms of how they want to depict things. But I'm like, I need to give them a clearer idea of what's in my head so that they have a jumping off point. So like some of the thinking is done. And then if they're like, well, that's not going to work, or we want to diverge, then they totally can. But I like to sort of lay a groundwork. And I've been able to sort of bring that back when I'm working on a book that I'm going to draw myself. And because now it's just like second nature. I try and like do a lot of that thinking before I sit down to draw. And then when I do sit down to draw, it's like I can remember the images that were in my head when I was writing the script, even if it's not like totally we talked about Alan Moore a little bit before the panel, and I'm not writing like Alan Moore style panel descriptions or anything. I try to keep them very short, like more like a screenplay, but I like to give you like some visual ideas. And I'll use a lot of camera type language, cinematography type language, like over the shoulder, close up, medium shot, establishing shot, that kind of thing. Just because I think it's really helpful to just, it's nice to have that shorthand. So yeah, it's like pretty much the same process, but when I'm working with somebody else, they always, and that somebody else is usually, it's been Rebecca Mock for 3
Right.
books, for Compass South, Knife's Edge, and then Salt Magic is our new one that came out in the fall. Like Rebecca brings her own special flair and magic and all of her own research and visual ideas to that. So that's like the part that I really like about working with other people, is that they take your ideas and then they come back to you so much better is how it feels.
Previously you spoke a little bit about how like you find that location is really a thing that influences the books that you write. Like what other things influence the work you want to create? Like when you're thinking about it, what draws you to a project or awakens a story in you?
For a lot of books, it's an emotional angle, like something that maybe I'm grappling with in my own life. For the Eagle Rock books, it was a lot thinking about like I felt like I wasn't part of the boys club, and I like, you know, to an extent in comics, just because that's the industry I'm in. But music is probably even worse in terms of being not a guy, not a straight guy wanting to be part of that world. And I was like, I want to just make this story that's about being a creative person for girls and for people who aren't straight white guys, and make it fun and make it welcoming, and sort of like a little pep talk for people who maybe want to get into music or get into art or do just any creative thing and feel like they need permission. Like I wanted to make books that are like, here, you have permission to do this thing and you don't have to be perfect at it. You are still allowed and you're important. Your voice matters.
And I think like Bina is such a great character in that regard. Like I really find the challenges she faces and the way she overcomes her challenges, and her tenacity is so interesting, and just creates a really fascinating character. And do you really see a lot of yourself in Bina? Because I find I
Oh,
do.
well, first, thank you. I guess like yes and no. Like she likes to be the center of attention. She likes to be in the spotlight, and that's not really something that I relate to. But I kind of wanted to write her that way, just because it's you don't want to write somebody who's exactly like yourself all the time as a writer, because that gets boring. And I wanted her to be like really dynamic and somebody who gets into trouble and um, will do stuff she's not really supposed to do, like sneaking into her neighbor's house, her best friend's house, or like crashing a party like she does in, I think that's All Together
All
Now.
together now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's maybe one of my favorite scenes in the whole book or the whole series. Anyway, these are things that I would never do, but she's like a little bit spicier than me.
I wish for all of us to have characters that are just a little bit spicier than we are.
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I,
You saw that too, huh?
yeah, I did. We can just be done with that.
Moving on.
Carrying on. And these books, like a lot of the work that you've done, fall into the YA genre of books. Like, do you like what draws you in particular to creating books for young audiences?
Yeah, actually, like technically middle grade for most of them, which is like sort of a step below YA. YA would be more like high school. And YA is like, it's a free for all. You can, content wise, you can write about whatever, sex, drugs, rock and roll. And middle grade is like more like Raina Telgemeier, Vera Brosgol's books. So like for middle schoolers. And also like for middle schoolers, parents, like you want to sort of like, I try and toe the line between writing books that are like a little bit edgy, but not so edgy they're going to get shut out of school libraries and places like that. Like I try to stay away from language and swearing and stuff like that.
Right.
Just because it's like it's for younger kids. And I know that like when I was in middle school, I was also like little goody two shoes, and I would self-censor. I don't know if this is something you relate to as a reader, but I would sometimes, I was a big library kid, so I would go to the library and I would check out books, and sometimes I would get one that was like misshelved into the kids area, and I'd be like, oh, this looks cool. Like it would be, I was really into fantasy and stuff, and I definitely accidentally checked out some romance novels and stuff like that, and I would get them home and just be like, oh my gosh, am I going to get in trouble? So anyway, that's the sort of thing that I think about when I'm writing middle grade books. The thing I also like about middle grade is I feel like you can do books that are a little more plotty and a little more less grounded in reality sometimes.
Right.
Like the Eagle Rock books are definitely not totally grounded in reality. There is not, as far as I know, this huge underground scene of just like kids and young teenagers bands in LA, which I've made in the book. But wouldn't it be cool if that was real?
Yeah. It actually, that community and that artistic community actually reminded me a lot. I spent my university years in Halifax,
Uh-huh.
where that very much is, in a sense, with the music. I mean, not so young, but mostly, and it made me feel really connected to the. It just reminded me of that, and I loved it so much. I was like, oh yay! I go to all my friends' shows all the time in the middle of the afternoon.
Were these like punk shows or just like little like garage band type things?
Garage bands, like yeah, it's there's a really strong indie music scene in Halifax. It really is just like people playing in their garages, and then you just go around and visit them. And
is it like the whole like Cape Breton influence and all the Kayleys and stuff, and people just growing up with music in their life? Because we don't have that here, like not in North Carolina. There's nothing like that. Like I know there's some kind of punk scene, but that's really kind of different. It's sort of like next to what I'm writing about here. It's not quite the same thing.
No. I've always really enjoyed, I loved the music scene in these books. I loved the community, and I loved the way that and I love the way that Bina found herself in this community through her music. Do you like, how do you think that art brings a community together?
Well, that's a good question. Um, wow.
The stumper. I've asked a big one
That
there.
that is a stumper. Oh my gosh. Uh, well, I think it's always nice to see your life and your community reflected in art in this way that makes you see it as something beautiful and worthy in a way that it doesn't always seem when you're just living there, living in it. Um, I definitely, when I was younger, had my times when I felt like, oh, comics, this whole scene, it's just like it's such a pain. It's so insular. It's um like I don't want to be part of it. Uh, and now that I'm older, I'm like, that's silly. I think that's just being like a snotty little young person who
Yeah.
doesn't appreciate the community that she has. It's like now that I'm older, I see how cool being in the arts really is. And there, I love being around just seeing like the younger generations coming up and making stuff and really pushing the boundaries and pushing the envelope. And it's not the boys club that it was when I was younger, comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think comics has really changed a lot in our lifetime.
Mhm.
Just the landscape of like who is creating and what stories are being told, even like at a very foundational level, is really changing, and it's great. Like I am really excited to be a comics reader and lover at this time in my life. Um, so when you are no, I'm going to scratch that. One of the things that I also thought was really interesting about the characters in this series is that they really identify themselves by their interests. Like there are sporty kids and there are music kids, and I'm curious. Do you, because I think that like those kind of things are how you like build an identity when you're a younger person. And do you feel like your interests kind of define you when you're younger?
They did for me, definitely. I was definitely the arty kid, and that was totally just how I defined myself. And I would look for like examples of other arty kids in movies and on TV, and I would be like, oh, okay, that's another arty person, and that's what I'm supposed to be like. I'm supposed to have like colored hair. I had like Run Lola Run red hair for a while in the 90s, or purple hair, and I was like, okay, I want to be like this edgy arty kid because that's who I am, and I want people to know. And I think that's definitely a big part of being young, is just like using your interests and like your passion and all that stuff to say, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and this is the group that I belong to. um I don't know if it's still that way now. I think it probably is to an extent, but maybe people aren't totally identifying themselves so much by their like hobbies
Yeah,
anymore. I think it's maybe more political and more to do with gender, for sure, which is
yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah. I think there's a
Yeah,
lot of really interesting identity stuff happening there.
totally. And I think a lot about how I would be grappling with all of this stuff if I was like 14 right now. And I just can't. It's like it's too beyond me. But like for me, it was being an arty kid. That was like my little rebellion, Like all my friends were pretty sporty in high school and in middle school, and I went to a prep school, so it was a pretty what's the word I'm looking for? We had a strict dress code. Uh, there you weren't really allowed to wear a lot of stuff, or
Right.
yeah. So I guess like just being the art kid was the way that I could say, hey, I'm not like the other kids.
So you said that you always were an art kid, but was it always comics? Was comics always the way that was going to manifest for
No,
you?
no, no, no. When I was really little, I think I was just like, I want to be a writer or an artist. And I was always making up stories and drawing pictures and stuff like that. And then I didn't start reading comics really that weren't newspaper comics until I was, I think, probably around 7 or 8. And that was the year that my dad's a professor, and he went on sabbatical and moved the whole family to France for a year. And I got into comics through reading BD because I didn't know French. Like, we moved over, I didn't know any French. My parents just put me and my brother in the local village school, and it was like, okay, learn by immersion. So anyway, they would buy me comics to help with my French comprehension. And I got really into like Tintin and Asterix and stuff like that. Adventure stories, which that's what I really loved and something I still love. So that was when I really started getting into comics. And then we moved back to the US, and I just couldn't find stuff like that here. Like, I went to the comic store and it's like all superhero stuff and you know, like 90s superhero stuff. So just like skin tight, everything, just like boobs spilling out. And it totally freaked me out. I was like, it was embarrassing to me as a kid. So then I didn't really read comics again until I got into high school. And then I got into manga through a friend, and Ranma 1/2 specifically. And it totally blew my mind. I mean, there's boobs in that too, but it's like, it's so innocent, it's different.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the volumes were really expensive. And I'm talking about the manga, not the anime. So
Right.
we would take turns, there was a group of us, and we would take turns buying a volume, like ordering it. And then it would come and we would all pass it around and like read it. And then somebody would order the next one. So I got into manga, and then I got into sort of US indie comics like Ghost World and stuff like that after that. And then sort of just like kept on reading. And that was when I was really interested in film as well, and animation. I knew I wanted to do something in that visual storytelling space, but I wasn't really sure where I was going to land. Ended up going to film school for a year, and then I was like, you know, this isn't really like this. It didn't feel like a fit. So then I moved into illustration instead.
Amazing.
And then one thing sort of led to another, and I ended up in comics.
I find that's ta-da! You did it. Something that I also I was really interested in, like your reference to like learning about adventure stories, like adventure stories being a thing that you wrote, and also talking a little bit about superhero comics, because you also did a run on Batgirl.
Yes.
And you also wrote Who is AC, which is another sort of like middle grade superhero book. When you're writing superheroes, like what are you looking for in those characters? Like how are you, like, what's your spin
Oh my gosh,
on that?
this is another hard question.
I'm sorry.
Well, okay, so writing Batgirl was super fun. I came to that book as not a superhero reader still. And I found that working on those books just gave me so much respect for the superhero side of the medium, which I feel like does not get enough respect. Like, especially from indie comics people, there's like, capes. And I was totally like that in my 20s. But here's some things that are cool about superhero comics. You can be super topical because those books turn around really fast, so fast. Like, they get written and then they're in print in your local comic store. I don't remember how quickly, but pretty quickly, like within a month or two, right?
Yeah.
Because like you're creating a whole book in like a month. So the schedule is really grueling, and that's actually why I'm not doing those books anymore, because it's just like it really just like it bleeds out into your whole life, your schedule, your weekend, your vacation, all that stuff. And I was like, I can't. Like, I have a family now, and that's important to me. And like other things than just writing comics. But you know, the drawbacks are also the benefits for that. And I found that I really liked all of the history in books and the way that you can like go way back, and like, because they're always rebooting everything. So you can like go back and you can tease out something from a previous run, or like the distant past history, and spin it in a new way. So it's like kind of like having a lot of the rough draft written for you, because there's just all this stuff that you can play with in a new way and like turn it around and make it reflect the way the world is right now and have it be really fresh and really topical. So that was what I enjoyed about writing Batgirl. And I also really like writing action. It's a lot of fun. I don't get a chance to do too much of that now. And that's kind of a bummer, but you know.
Um, so something else, one of the big themes that I see come up in your work again and again is family and relationship with family. And in particular, I mean, I also read Salt Magic, and I thought I found that very relatable, and but also like such a fascinating story about her relationship with her brother and like how that pushes her to go on this journey. Um, and you've just mentioned that now you yourself have a family. How do you feel like that is? How do you feel like that influences your work? Like what makes you bring those themes into your work?
Well, I've always had a pretty, I would say, complicated relationship with my family, and I haven't always lived very close to them.
Mhm.
So I think it's a theme that I explore partly because you can you can give yourself the family relationships you wish you had sometimes in books. And it's also like, especially now that I have a little kid, a toddler, it's a way to think about like, if I was the parent in this situation, how would I react um, to Bina like wanting to make a record and at the age of, what is she, like 14,
Yeah.
13, something like that. And yeah, and Salt Magic also is like is definitely about what uh, it's about all the ways that you can be in a family and
Mhm.
um, be a sibling, be a parent, be like a cool aunt, all of those things. And I really wanted to explore that. I wrote that book at a time in my life when I was in my mid 30s, and I was divorced, and I also just had a relationship fall apart. And I was like, I am in my mid 30s. I really want to have a kid. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Like what are my possible options as a mid 30s woman? Like, so a lot of the way that I was thinking about the different characters, specifically Greta, Salt Witch, Dee the Sugar
Mhm.
Witch, and Von Seal, the protagonist, is like, what are my options as a woman in the world right now, you know, and what are her options as are Von Seal's options as a girl in the 20s,
Right.
and you know, like what kind of person do you want to be? So those were the ideas that I was exploring a lot on an emotional level in that book, and I think it comes through if you read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and that's also true for all of your characters in the Eagle Rock series as well. Like you can really see them figuring out who they are and figuring
Uh-huh.
out where they're going. Um, one of
Oh,
the
sorry, I have one more thing since I totally like didn't think about this till now, but so one of my favorite relationships in the Eagle Rock books is the friendship between Bina and Charlie, who is her best friend Austin's older sister. And that was one that I always really wanted to explore, and I knew it was going to be really fun to explore because Bina is the youngest of three siblings, and her two brothers are a lot older, like in their 20s. Like one might be in his late teens, but anyway, so they're out of the house, and she's there at home, and she's 13, and she's like got all of the parental, like the eye of Sauron just like bearing down on her, you know. And I think she like really misses her older siblings and wants another sibling figure in her life. So that is especially explored in All Summer Long, the first book in the series. And I like that relationship a lot. It was fun.
I love like I just think that one of the things that I really love about the Eagle Rock series is I love watching Bina and all of the other characters like come together, like make new friendships, and like just seeing how those friendships are navigated,
Mhm.
and how you manage growing up around
Mhm.
people, and the ways that growing up changes you. Do you feel like that's something that you've seen a lot in your own life? Like, is that like, have you, like, are these relationship issues that have come up for you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a big one would be like All Together Now explores collaboration and how you navigate that. And it's expressed through a band in that. But I mean, comics can be a collaborative medium, and there a lot of people are coming together to make a book. Like if it's a superhero book, you've just got like a ton of people. You've got the editor, you've got the writer, you've got the it could be a penciler, an inker, a colorist, a letterer, like a huge team of people. And it's like we have this situation in comics that people always get really riled up about, understandably, where the writer gets a ton of credit and nobody else is really seen as being uh as driving the work creatively in the same way, which is really unfair because the writer in a lot of ways has by far the easiest job. I mean, like having done all the jobs, I know that this is true. Like it just does not require the amount of time to write
Mm.
a comic script as it does to draw a comic page or to color or to letter. And it, and as a writer, it can be really easy to just take credit and be like, "Oh, this is my book." Uh, like I made that, but it's not true, and it's really important to remember and to value and to celebrate all the other people who make these things come to life.
Yeah, primarily my background as an artist is in live art, and the same. I think the same thing happens in all genres of art. Like you end up with someone who's at the center of it, and somehow that becomes, yeah. There's a lot of focus drawn to that person, but I also really enjoyed how Darcy and Bina stayed friends even after
Mhm.
the band broke up. Like I thought that
Yeah,
was really great to see how they like repaired their relationship and were like, we can still be friends even if we can't be in a band together.
work together. Yeah, yeah, I really like that too. That was fun to write. So if you haven't read the books, basically the situation is Bina and Darcy are in a band together. They have some creative differences and some social issues because Darcy starts dating their drummer, and the band sort of implodes or explodes. Maybe both implodes and then explodes. Uh, and then later on, Bina and Darcy find their way back to being friends. And I think that's nice. It's like sometimes there are people in your life that you maybe don't collaborate very well with, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a place in your life. You can still be friends. You just need to figure out what the boundaries of your relationship are. And I think that's a lesson that I'm still, learning all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's true of all of us. Like I mean, yeah, I think it's something that I think is often not really thought about, especially in adult relationships, is that a relationship is a constantly evolving thing. Like it never stays static.
Yeah.
So I often find myself thinking a lot about like, what does this relationship mean to me now?
Yeah.
And how does it serve me? And yeah, anyways, I'm talking a lot about relationships now.
No, I like it. I was going to say it. They're always being renegotiated.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's a thing that I, I've gotten better at it now that I'll be 40 this year. And I think finally, perhaps I've gotten a little bit better. And maybe it's having a kid and having to be a good role model and stuff and think about this stuff and work on like really work my patience muscle, my empathy muscle. Um, but yeah, that stuff is hard for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I also find, and I love this about books in general, and I especially saw a lot of it in Eagle Rock, is that you really get the opportunity to see Bina like thinking through those
Mhm.
kind of processes where she's like renegotiating her relationship with Austin, her best friend. Um, because of course they're growing up and he's starting to become interested in something else, and
Mhm.
she's not sure. She's not sure. And I really appreciated how like Austin was all like how they dealt with the rejection and how they dealt with coming back together. I thought all of that was really just so true to the way that relationships really are. I also find as I
Thank you
get older,
so
I'm also
much.
turning 40 this year,
Uh-huh.
um, that I've become a lot more comfortable in ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that was so gratifying for me about doing the Eagle Rock books is that it was the first time that I had 3 books to like explore the relationships in a group of characters. And that is just such a joy as a writer, that you've got your starting point, and then as the story evolves and different forces are working on these relationships, like how do they change, how do people change, how do romantic and friendship relationships evolve, and like parent-child relationships, um and sibling relationships. It's really fun, and it's one of the things that you don't really get to do too often in comics a lot of the time, as well in graphic novels, I will say that, because you never have as many pages as you want to use, just for like, it takes a long time to create them, and also it's more expensive to produce like a really long book.
Mhm.
So usually you have a limit on how many pages you can devote to a story. So yeah, it was really awesome to get to do that in an original series. That's something I got to do more of in Batgirl as well. So
Right.
there's another plus for superhero comics, is you can do more of that long form, short
Hmm.
form slash long form stuff, which is fun.
Yeah, a long arc is something that you really can, like a longer story with more backgrounds, and you have space to explore
Yeah.
because you are writing so many things. I thought of a question and now I've lost it, but I'm going to ask you, um, what is your creating playlist? Like, what do you listen to for music when you are writing or drawing? Or
Well,
do
it's
you?
just it's just I do, and it's just so embarrassing right now, because right now it's like just wall to wall Taylor Swift and Harry Styles. I And also Angel Olsen. I like the new record a lot. For a while, I was writing my YA Asheville book, and it was a lot of like Elliott Smith, just like grim song after grim song. And now I've swung totally in the opposite direction.
And that's all pop.
Now it's just like a lot of pop right now, and I think part of it is that my toddler likes pop music a lot, so I've gotten more into it because I can put it on and she won't demand to be changed to Thomas the Train. Um,
Anything to avoid Thomas. um, so, can you tell us a little bit about the book you're working on now?
um, yeah, I can tell you a little bit. It's YA. I think it's going to be called Be That Way, and it's set in Asheville in the 90s, Asheville, North Carolina, where I'm from. And it's a hybrid book in diary format. So it is a mix of diary entries. There's a lot of comics in there, illustration, collagey sort of stuff. There's a lot of art in it, a lot of art. But it's not a graphic novel. So it's been very hard and also very fun.
And where in the process are you at right now? Like, are you
I'm doing the
still
art.
doing
I'm
the
doing
art?
the art. Yeah. Yeah. It took a long time to get the text working, like years. And I did 3 or 4 revisions, and every time I threw out a third to a half of the book and rewrote it and did massive changes. And I don't know if that's what novelists do, but it was very hard in a way that writing a graphic novel is not for me, because with graphic novels, it's like I know the rules, I know my shorthand.
Right.
Um, it's it's not easy to write a graphic novel, to script a graphic novel, but I have all of these like, when you go bowling, if you're a bad bowler, you can like put the bumpers up. So like I have my bumpers, like I can't, like the ball is going to make it to the end of the alley. What do you call that? What's the wood part that you bowl on?
The lane.
The lane. Thank you. So the
Yeah.
ball is going to make it to the end of the lane. It's going to hit the pins with a graphic novel. But like, I feel when I move away from that, I had a lot of gutter balls on this book is what I'm saying. I don't know why I went down this extended bowling metaphor.
It's okay. I'm into it. I think this is great.
I'm a really bad bowler as well, so.
But it's just so much fun, even if you are terrible at it, which I guess is also what creation is like sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, you're terrible.
So
it's terrible
this
until
book
it's
is,
not.
it's terrible until it's not. So this book that you're working on is not necessarily, you would not characterize this as a graphic novel. Like this
It is not. No, it's fully not a graphic novel. Yeah, it's mostly prose, but tons and tons of art as well. So I think it will be accessible to comics readers.
I mean, I'm very excited by the sound of that. So as an artist, like I'm just thinking again about like art and artists and creation and how that all works. So we talked a little bit about how collaboration works, but like how do you deal with working when you are working by yourself? Like do you have any like hot tips for like how to keep motivated, for how to like navigate past those gutter balls?
I try and keep a pretty like a rigid is not the right word, but like predictable schedule. I get up, I do my best work in the morning, so I try and do as much work as possible in the morning, and then after lunch it's like diminishing returns to an extent. But I just try and have like my office hours when I'm here and I'm working, and I take weekends off. That's really important to me to try and do that, because in the past I have not done that, or I've like let my work just sort of like bleed ever more into Saturday. And I think that just led to me burning out. And I don't think it really helps my productivity either. Like you get this idea that if you're working on the weekend, you're getting more done, but that's actually not my experience. Whereas if I take the weekend off, then I come back on Monday and I'm like, yeah, raring to go. Let's do some work. So yeah, I think that's probably my big tip. If you can, like if you're working a day job or something, you work it in, you fit it in wherever you can. But then it's kind of different because it's like, it's a passion and not a job. If comics is your job, then you got to treat it like a job to an extent, is my opinion. Have some boundaries so it doesn't take over your life.
Yeah, one of the things that I mean, look at me circling back to these books again. One of the things that I really loved about Eagle Rock is that Bina's parents were very realistic about the business side of what Bina was doing, being like, you can't record an album, like you're not ready to sign to a label and all of that. And I think that's something that like young artists often, it's very easy to get swept up in ideas about like thinking that that's what success is, and not realizing that you need to like take your time.
Yeah.
Take your space.
Yeah. Well, also like, since this is an LA book, and in LA, so many parents are working in the film industry or the music industry or whatever. So like both of her parents are in the entertainment industry, and they're like, no, I'm not going to let you get sucked into the machine at this age. Are you kidding me? No way. Like it's not like, maybe if your parents were like a plumber or an accountant in Ohio, they would let you take that record deal at 13. But in LA, they would be like, absolutely not. Like, I know what this means.
They were very cool parents. Like there were lots of like, let's go to shows. And I love that. I thought that was awesome. I'm trying to decide what my last question will be.
Take your time.
I really am taking my time. So I guess the last thing, because I know that like right now, I mean, thank you for joining us. Right now in the States, it's a pretty bleak time to be living in. And something you said earlier about how superhero comics are so reactive really made me think about that. What do you think we're going to see a lot of in comics in the next couple of years?
Oh boy. Well, uh, for anyone who's watching this later on YouTube, today is the day that actually just like an hour before this panel, Roe v. Wade got overturned by the Supreme Court. Yesterday, a bunch of gun stuff happened, good and mostly bad. So it's a grim time.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty amazed that we managed to get into the fun middle grade comics zone for this conversation, because I was sitting here before the panel and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna throw up. This is just horrible, and nobody wants to talk about comics right now. But it's always good to have the arts at times like this, because they can make you feel a little bit better about the world, show you the beautiful parts of the world, encourage you to fight back. I think we're probably going to see in superhero comics a lot of like rallying cries to turn the direction that the US is moving in around, try and claw it back from these really conservative forces that are seemingly, from my point of view, making decisions that the majority of the country does not agree with. I try not to get super political anymore online, but I just feel like this is beyond the pale. Like, I don't even consider myself as like super far left, like radical or anything like that. Like, I am sort of moving a little more toward the middle left. But this is just, I never thought I'd see these things happening in my lifetime. And my heart really goes out to everybody with a uterus, everyone who's pregnant, everyone who has a daughter. It stinks.
Yes.
To put it really mildly.
And I feel, in times like this, I feel exceptionally grateful for art. I feel art gives us an opportunity to speak. Art gives us an opportunity to share. And I'm really grateful that you could make
to
the
find
time
empathy as well for people that we might not even necessarily agree with. That's, that one of the things that's so cool about comics, especially, is that you can, especially for people who can't connect with characters' emotions through prose, if you can see on someone's face what they're feeling in a comic, then you can understand it. And that's really important. So that's one of the magical things about comics, is that you can write a story and say, here's something that's happening in the world right now, and here's how it's really affecting this person and making them feel. And that can be really affecting. And hope, I mean, I'm not naive enough to really believe that art can change the world in that way, but at least it can open minds and make people feel a little better.
Yeah. And on that note, thank you so much for being in community and in art with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to finally be at TCAF again, even if only virtually.
Yay! This has been a really wonderful conversation. Again, I really want to thank you, Hope, for coming and speaking with us. Jalen, I want to thank you for running this panel for me.
Thank you, Jalen.
I want to thank all of the Toronto Comic Arts people for all of the work they do in making these beautiful programs for all of us to enjoy. This is part of our digital programming stream. We have other programs as well that will be popping up on YouTube and also as live webinars. In particular, on Sunday at 4 p.m., we have Emma Hunsberger. oh God, I said that wrong. Coming and doing a chat.
Canceled.
I'm canceled. It's over. It's over. I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We'd like to thank our programming sponsor, the Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. We also receive government support from the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and Toronto Arts Council. And we have to give a huge shout out and special thanks to the Beguiling Books and Art and Page and Panel, the TCAF shop, for all of their support in creating the festival. Also, if you are seeing this before the 26th, that means our digital marketplace is still open. So you can still go buy amazing work from a number of creators. I have already spent far too much money there myself. Good job, Pip. Thank you so much again, Hope. Thank you, Toronto Comics. And I hope everyone out there has a great rest of their day reading art.
I hope you enjoyed that feature presentation for TCAF 2022. Before we go, I'd like to once again thank our programming sponsor, Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. I'd also like to take a moment to thank the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Art Council, and the Toronto Art Council for their generous support. Special thanks, of course, to the Beguiling Books and Art. I hope you enjoyed the time. Thank you so much for it, and we'll see you again soon.